Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
About a year and a half ago, I gave a presentation on my wife's and my hike to Everest Base Camp. It was an arduous journey, but I estimated that a good portion of the audience could make the trek. We carried a day pack while Sherpa carried all of our clothes. Climbing to the top of Mount Everest is not in the same league as what we did. First of all, we hiked while summiting Everest involves mountaineering. That is pickaxes, ropes, and pitons. Also, while the Sherpas carry the majority of the load, just your clothes and equipment can weigh 25 pounds. However, perhaps the biggest difference is thin air. While there is 50% as much oxygen in the air at base camp, man is not designed to survive above 20,000 feet, and Everest is about 29,000 feet. Only about 2,100 people have summited Everest in the 68 and Hillary first summited in 1951 and lived to tell about it. A surprising number of people make it up but don't make it down. The one thing that extreme hikers and climbers do have in common is that you do it for the challenge. Please give a warm welcome to Terry Shaw.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here. A lot of people ask me why I got into mountaineering, and climbing Mount Everest was certainly not like a childhood dream of mine or anything like that. It sort of evolved. I'm a runner, so as a matter of fact, I completed my 15th marathon in November, and I used to run a lot of road races. As I got older and slower, I decided to run further. Got into marathons, and the first couple, it's pretty emotional when you cross that finish line. But then after having done a few of those, not that they're ever easy, it just seemed like I needed another challenge. So I read the book Into Thin Air. Many of you probably have heard of that because of the movie of Everest that's out. And it intrigued me. There's the endurance sport aspect, there's the objective hazards, buying all this cool equipment. There's just a lot to it. So being a real analytical that I am, I took mountaineering courses out west in the Cascades. Being good business people that they are, they told me I was a natural and I should go further and higher, and I started going to South America. And it was on a climb of Huascarin in Peru, which is the third highest mountain in South America. And I summited that, where I got the idea to climb an 8,000 meter peak. So there's 14 mountains in the world that are over 8,000 meters, which is about 26,500 feet or so. And there is certain prestige, at least in the mountaineering world, about climbing 8,000 meter peaks. So I wanted to try one. I chose Cho Oyu, which is in Tibet, as my first mountain of over 8,000 meters. And on that mountain, and it was a pretty sketchy day that we summited, but it's a huge summit plateau, a couple of football fields big that you basically have to go across once you're pretty much at the top. And you know you've summited Cho Oyu when you can see Mount Everest on the other side, which is 30 miles to the west. Like I said, it was a sketchy day. I did get my 22nd glimpse of Mount Everest, but at that point, Mount Everest actually didn't look any higher than Cho Oyu, where I was standing, even though it was 3,000 feet higher. But I thought, okay, I'll give Mount Everest a shot. So I guess we gotta get back to the beginning here. I do, where is it? No, it wasn't. So in 2007, I got on a plane, went to Los Angeles, flew from Los Angeles to Bangkok, which is a grueling 17-hour flight, spent the night in Bangkok, and then took another flight from Bangkok to Kathmandu. And we spent a couple days in Kathmandu. Actually, where are we here? I can't get back to the first picture. But I actually had a picture of Kathmandu, but if you've never been to Kathmandu or heard of Kathmandu, It is definitely a third world country, city. It's a dusty little nastiness. That's the tourist district. But it's just a conglomeration of things. You can find anything on the streets. I wish this would stop doing the self-advance. After a few days of that, the objective is to start to climb. And the climb actually starts in a town called Lukla, which is somewhere around 9,000 feet or so. And this is how you get there. This airport at Lukla, by the way, is been classified as the world's most dangerous airport. This runway has been carved in the side of the mountain, and you pretty much get one shot to land and take off when you're on it. But the funny thing is, I was sitting right about here on this plane, so I'm watching the pilots do their thing. The first thing I notice is that in this airplane, the steering wheel is like duct taped together. It's a little bit unnerving in itself. But the plane takes off from Kathmandu, and the minute it gets into the air, the pilots give each other a high five. So, yeah, that's real confidence. And then you're flying in, and this plane is kind of skirting across the tops of ridges and things like that, and you're getting ground warnings, and they're turning buttons off and warnings down, and you're sitting in there with a bunch of plywood, a couple of animals, and your climbing stuff, pretty much. So you get there, and this is the runway. There's a cliff on this side of it, and this runway actually angles pretty steeply uphill. So when you're landing uphill. When you're taking off, you're kind of like angled downhill. And when this thing takes off, it actually drops before it picks up some air. So it's a pretty exciting first part of the journey. And that's just getting to the start of the walk, pretty much. So this, like I said, is the land. There goes a plane down the runway. But the first 7 days or so of climbing Mount Everest is basically walking from Lukla to Everest Base Camp. And it's a trek up the valley, the Kosi River. You kind of follow it the whole way. And we spent our nights in these are tea houses. So this is lodging, and you can get dinners and things like that there. This is my climbing partner. When I climbed this mountain, I went with a guide company. Climbing Mount Everest can be really expensive. So I'm not a really expensive kind of guy, so I went with pretty much as cheap a outfitter as I could go with, which meant it was unguided. So you only had one rule, and that rule was that you had to have a climbing partner to climb with. So I hired Lakpa as my climbing partner because I didn't want to really be like relying on trying to find somebody on the mountain. We had a team in name only where we were sharing like some tents and base camp and stuff like that. But Lakpa and I, we were just climbing partners, pretty much just a two-man team, all through the whole thing. And this is him and I pretty much climbing up through the valley. Another picture of some tea houses and things. It's actually pretty nice, the first part. It's nice, really good trails and things like that. We'll get into, I do this talk a lot for kids, and I do like to get into the culture a little bit with it. And you can see some kids here. These kids are remarkably happy. You will not find any kind of motorized vehicles from the flight where you hit the airport until you get to Everest Base Camp. Everything that gets moved by people or yaks, or you walk, pretty much. So these kids are plenty happy with all of that, and it's hard for some of these other kids to imagine. On our third day, I guess, we got to this town, and this is a town called Namche Bazaar. This is actually the Sherpa capital for the valley, pretty much. You can see this is actually carved into the mountain, just like pretty much everything else on the walk. It's kind of cool. There's steps and things all throughout that get up and down to the different tea houses. But you can pretty much find everything you could find in Kathmandu in Namche Bazaar. There's climbing shops, there's internet, bakeries, things like that. So Good place to hang out for a couple of days. And then up above Nancy Bazaar is when you really start to see like the mountains come into to their full glory. This is a cordon, and again, it's just it's one of the Buddhist statues that they have. Cordons usually always pass in a clockwise direction, so you want to kind of stay to the left if you're just going to go by them. I tried to really stick with Buddhist tradition as much as I could. I was kind of in the feeling where I'm in their land, and Lakpa really believed in it, more importantly than anything else. He was my partner, he believed in it, and I figured it couldn't hurt either, because it's not like the safest place in the world. This is one of the monasteries that you will come across. It's a place called Tengbushe. This is a monastery where people, they do, what's the word I'm looking for? But they'll flock from all over Nepal to this monastery. And there's prayer wheels all along, and they'll just keep doing clockwise rotations around the monastery, spinning the prayer wheels and saying prayers for weeks sometimes. Again, this is more of the trek. Like I said, everything that gets moved on yaks, or people are carrying them. This is just a yak train. And when you're doing this trek, you will get in front or behind these yak trains like nonstop. So you have to keep your kind of eye out for them, because they don't stop. They just keep moving. And you can see them winding around through the mountains. They're pretty agile. They'll go up into the snow. I have one picture. Now this guy, the real reason he's even on this picture is because once you get to the airport, your big bags pretty much get thrown onto a yak, and you don't see them again until you get to Everest Base Camp. At least you usually don't see them again. That's my bag on this yak going by me on the trail, so I just thought that was kind of cool. I took a picture of it. And this is the other way that things get moved. These porters will work for like $2 a day to haul like monster loads. I mean, I've seen guys that are hauling like 4 or 5 sheets of plywood or 10 cases of soda. I mean, it's just amazing, like the amount of work that they do for next to nothing. This guy's doing a lot of work the way it looks. Again, there's more sights through the valley as we're moving up. This was that monastery right here, the Tengbushe monastery that I was talking about. The trail, as you're following it, it kind of crosses these suspension bridges, so it's constantly crossing the river one side to the other, and it's a ride getting across these bridges. I mean, there's not a whole lot of safety going on there. There's a lot of movement going on. Yaks are going across while you're trying to walk across. That's Lakpa coming across, or is it me? That's me coming across. I'm sorry. And you'll see a lot of this everywhere, prayer flags. And I have some. These are actual prayer flags that were hanging at our Everest Base Camp. I got Lakpa to take some. But these colors all represent like an element, so like earth and sky and water. And then each one also has a prayer printed on them. And in the Buddhist tradition, they hang these everywhere, especially where anything could be dangerous, so that the wind can carry these prayers to the heavens. So you'll see them, even actually on the summit of Mount Everest, you'll see prayer flags that probably one of the Sherpas carried up there. That's me going further across. Here comes the yaks, barreling across as well. And like I said, they won't stop. You got to make room for them. That's Lakpa. I've not seen Lakpa again after this trip, but for 2 months we were pretty close. This is a town called Tengbushe, and this is a place we actually stayed a lot. This is one of the tea houses. These are the guest rooms over here. They don't have water. Pretty much it's just like a platform made out of plywood with a kind of a dirty old mattress on it. But they also had a kitchen that you could go to, actually upstairs, and then good place to hang out. That's Lakpa and a llama. So at Pangbuche, we did our first puja, and there were 2 pujas. There was one here, and then there was another one at base camp. So the first puja, what we did was we bought what is called, this is a kata. So you pay like $2 and you buy a kata. And you take this to the lama. And the lama will then bless you, basically, for the trip up Mount Everest. So what he does is, well, first you wrap money in this so that he will bless you. And then, and then he does his blessing. But so while he's doing this blessing, he made this amulet, and this amulet actually inside has a piece of rice, which is an offering to the mountain. And they really, like I said, strongly believe that the mountain is reverent to them. So it's an offering to the mountain, and there's an eagle feather as well in here. So the eagle feather is for you for strength, and the rice is for the mountain, so that it will allow you to climb it safely. And he also gives you a string that you basically wear at all times. So the whole time, you know, I carried the kata, more the string, and everybody does, because, you know, like I said, Lakpa really believed in it, and I figured it couldn't hurt. So the funny thing with this lama, though, so you're in the middle of nowhere pretty much, but he actually had a scrapbook where he can show you pictures where this guy's traveled like everywhere in the States. He was pretty proud of it too. So he'll show you pictures and stuff after he takes your money and does the blessing. But so a little bit further up the trail, this actually is an area of monuments. Now every one of these cordons that were built here are basically dedicated to somebody who has died on the mountain. So if you walk through there, you can see like a lot of the famous names from the movie, Rob Hall and Scott Fisher and a bunch of Sherpas and other famous people. But there's tons of them. They're all throughout the mountainside at this area. So it's pretty sombering. I mean, there are some really good climbers that you're walking by their monuments. So it kind of puts things definitely into perspective as to what you're getting yourself into at that point. And again, there's just more of them. I believe that might be Ama Dablam, which is a really famous mountain over there. It's called Mother's Necklace. There's a hanging glacier that kind of looks like a necklace on it. This is a town, Verche. There's actually a clinic right there for altitude sickness. So altitude sickness can happen as low as 10,000 feet. And what happened was in this town, a bunch of Japanese, just trekkers got there, got altitude sick. A couple of them died, so they put a clinic here. But eventually you get to Everest Base Camp. So this is Everest Base Camp. Our Everest Base Camp, like I said, you can see it looks pretty modest. Our tents kind of patched together and stuff. But everybody got their own sleeping tent, which this is your home for pretty much a month and a half on the mountain. You had a place to go and come back to. So we had a dining tent. We have a shower tent and a latrine. Basic. I'm not sure if that's the shower or the latrine, but they both look the same. I didn't know at the time, but I don't know now anymore. But that might have been my tent. They're on the rocks. Now this is glacier right here. So this whole thing is still moving. It looks like it's just dirt and rocks. But by the end of the trip, like everything shifted and it was not a very comfortable sleep because there's just rocks going everywhere. So no matter how much you tried to level it off, it's constant movement. So like I said, it's a little uncomfortable. This is the second puja. Now this puja, the Sherpas will not climb the mountain until you do this. So they make a cake. It's shaped like Everest, I guess if you use your imagination. That's the cake in the middle. They put a lot of other food around, drink a ton of whiskey and expect you to drink a ton of whiskey. And then it's, again, an offering to the mountain. We put all our climbing equipment around it. Anything that touched the mountain, we put around the altar to be blessed. So again, it's for safe passage. And like I said, Sherpas won't start going up and down the mountain until you have this puja ceremony. There's the altar. Now, every time we went up the mountain, they would burn juniper branches. Again, it was an offering to the mountain for safe passage. You can see the prayer flags, which I have a few here from that. Oh, and well, let's get a picture of it anyway. So from here on out, the climb is definitely on snow and ice. So this is the Khumbu ice fall, and that's the route. The route goes right up that ice fall. It's a place that's moving. That ice fall is moving, I think, like 6 feet a day. So you can go up it, and you're climbing Everest is kind of like it's not a one-time deal where you go up till you get to the summit. You basically go up and you acclimatize and you come back down. So we went up to Camp 1, didn't even spend the night, just came right back down. And the next time we went up, Camp 1, spent the night, climbed up a little bit higher, came all the way back down to base camp. So you do this like 4 times. Just keep going up higher on the mountain. Every time I went to that ice fall, it was different. So one time you're going under a serac, the next time you're going over, or one time you're going across flat. Now it's dropped down like 8 feet. So it's really unstable, really dangerous. Climb it at night, which is when it's most stable. That's true of all alpine climbing for the most part. You'll see this is a theme throughout. You climb in the dark. As much fun as that sounds, but it is safe. These are a couple of base camp guys, our cook and our base camp Sherpa. Pemba, that means Saturday. They're all named by the day of the week they were born. So there's only like a handful of names you have to remember, but there's a lot of them with the same name, so it creates its own confusion. These are a couple of the high altitude Sherpas, so they have high altitude. They're going to go up the mountain eventually. And this is a really good picture of the whole route. So base camp is down here. Well, it's kind of here. You can see a few tents. The route goes up the ice fall, gets into this valley. This is called the Western Coombe, Coombe meaning valley in Welsh, I believe. It goes up this face. This is the Lhotse face, crosses over to the South Col, and then follows that ridge line up to the summit of Everest. So camps, there's one here, there's one here, there's one in the middle of this face, and then one up at the South Col of Everest. So we have 4 camps on the mountain. The South Col is actually the start of 8,000 meters. Everything above that they call the death zone, because you're not surviving very long up above 8,000 meters. So this is, you can see base camp on the left, just kind of small colored dots. This is kind of moving up through the ice fall. And I have a bunch of different pictures here of the ice fall, because it's spectacular. That's actually me in the ice fall coming down through, waving and everything. But you can see this is what you're climbing through in this ice fall. It's just these ice formations. Like I said, real changeable, real crazy. That's me in the back there with the blue pack and down through. And then there's crevasses. Crevasses are when the ice fall breaks and splits open. You can go around crevasses. Some of them are small enough to jump across. For ease of passage and to make the route shorter, some entrepreneuring Sherpas put ladders across that they rent to different climbers. And these ladders, they can lash 4 or 5 of these together to cross some of the bigger crevasses. So as tricky as that looks, and you only have two guide ropes that you're holding on to that are actually even slack. So as tricky as it looks, that's the fun of it. And to boot, you're climbing across in this. So this is actually one of the boots that I wear on Everest. These are actually pretty cool boots. They're really high tech. They're like space age materials in there. These are rated for like 40 below zero. But these crampons, so you're going across these ladders in these metal spikes, which yeah, it's tricky. And if you really want to get a true appreciation, you should feel how heavy this is to be picking this up a couple thousand times or whatever it was to get up the mountain. So, but yeah, that's, and I have some other pictures. And these, like I said, this ice fall is moving all the time. So these ladders, they're, you know, you can check them, you can check anchors and things like that, but you could get to a point where a ladder could be snapped. You can get to a point where it's just hanging free in midair. Anything can happen in there. I think this one kind of, you get on it and then it would sort of like a seesaw kind of effect. So it was pretty crazy. Just a bunch of pictures getting through that ice fall. There's like some vertical climbing. You have to be a climber basically to get through it, no doubt. But once you're above that ice fall, this is our Camp 1. And like I said, we stayed there doing acclimatization, but it got to a point where like later in the climb, once you're acclimatized a little bit, I would skip it and just head straight for Camp 2. Again, these tents would melt out a little bit and it would get a little bit uncomfortable in there. But you're on the glacier. This is the western combe that I was telling you about. And the route would eventually head up this ice face and then head over to the col. The funny thing about the combe is when the clouds were covering the sun, it would probably be in the teens, maybe 20. The minute the sun came out, that temperature could skyrocket to 100 degrees. Because all the sun and the ultraviolet radiation was just like, it was like being in a microwave pretty much. I've never been so hot when the sun was out. But you're constantly, like 1 minute you're putting jackets on, the next minute you're taking everything off. And it was just unreal how quickly the temperature changed. This is our Camp 2, basically in the rocks over here. You can see a tent. On the way up through the combe, this sort of became like an advanced base camp. We had a kitchen and everything there. All the other camps, we had to cook in our tents. There's Camp 2, you can see it sort of at the base of the mountain. Bunch of climbers heading up through the combe. You can see all of the crevasses, so the route just kind of, you got to weave your way around the crevasses. That doesn't mean at any time there couldn't be snow bridges, so you really had to watch because crevasses can open up one day to the next or even 1 hour to the next depending on the weather conditions. This is our camp on our Camp 3 on that face that I was telling you about. It's steep there. You don't get out of your tent unless you are clipped to a rope. So ropes will go like right in front of the tent. First thing you do if you wanted to step out of the tent, clip on because you don't want to fall off. And I just have a couple of things here, but this is the ice screw. Everything, the ropes, everything are held to the mountain pretty much with ice screws. And then we clip onto the ropes. This is a little different from a lot of other climbing, but it made it where you didn't have to depend on climbers. You could climb independently and still maintain some safety. So what you did was you had this rope, and this is attached to you. This is called a jumar. So if you clip this onto the rope, it'll slide up the rope, but it won't pull back. So if you did fall, it would grab. This is just safety. You always want 2 points on the rope. So if you got to an anchor, you left this one on, you moved this one over it, and then you moved this one over it to follow. But you basically worked your way up the mountain using the jumar. As you're heading up the face, you can see actually how steep this face is from this angle. But this is a feature on the mountain called the Yellow Band. This is between Camp 3 and Camp 4. You can see climbers on it. So this is like rock, basically, that you have to get up and over. Again, you're doing this with these crampons on. Climbing on rock with crampons is not the most fun experience you'll ever have. But you do that. So this guy here actually is a friend of mine from my Cho Oyu climb, believe it or not. And he's not dead, he's just kind of resting. But, but the funny thing with him is I actually was getting close to the summit and I heard a guy say, congratulations, Terry. And I'm like, the only person I knew up there was Lakpa, I thought. But he comes around the corner and this is Dave Morton. He was a guide for Alpine Ascents. So yeah, it's, like I said, it's kind of a small world in the mountaineering community, but there's another picture of that yellow band that you have to climb up. And then what happens, you go up past that yellow band, and then this is our Camp 4 right here on the South Col. And there is never a worse place in the world to spend any time whatsoever. It is barren, it is windy, it is cold. But really what happened was, so like from Camp 3, I left that camp at, I don't know, 9 o'clock in the morning. I got up to Camp 4 at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or so. We pitched the tent, we melted some water, but really all we did was rest for like 4 hours at that tent. At 9:30 at night, so we pull out of the tent, so there was really no sleep. We started our climb. So I basically climbed from 9:30 at night. I ended up summiting at 11:30 in the morning, climbed all night. So again, it's the safest time to do it. But you can imagine you're basically climbing all day, resting 4 hours, and then taking off again to climb all night, and pretty much most of the next day. So this is the ridge. After Camp 4, you're heading up that ridge towards the summit of Mount Everest. That's actually me. Lakpa took this picture. I had a really good camera, but it froze and I broke it trying to fix it. So all of these pictures were taken with, maybe you remember, those little things that you could buy that were like disposable. So that's what I ended up taking all my Everest summit photos with. But as you're heading up that ridge, you come to a formation. This is called the south summit of Mount Everest. So all the time you're going up that ridge, you think you're seeing the summit, but you're actually seeing the south summit. If you watch that movie Everest, this is actually the place where Rob Hall ended up stopped moving. He ended up dying there. But you get to that south summit, and a lot of people will take a little break there, but what you see from there is this. So this is your last stretch from there to the summit. And this is what's called the Death Traverse. All the way up until that south summit, we had ropes that we could clip into. From here up to the summit, there were no ropes. It's just too hard for Sherpas to carry them and to mount them. So basically, I asked Lakpa to get my ice axe out, and this is the ice axe I used. And you basically use this for protection in case you were to fall or something would happen for balance. Another point in the mountain that can anchor you there. But yeah, it's exposed too, let me tell you. One side of this ridge, this side, is about I don't know, a 7,000 foot drop, I think. So you're talking like a couple miles until you hit something. This side is like 6,000 feet. And you're basically going up this ridge. That's like some serious exposure if you don't like heights, it's not a good place to be. This is the Hillary Step. You may have heard of that. It is some pretty steep vertical climbing that you have to do to get up the Hillary Step. A little bit closer, and then and at the very top, those are all actually cornices. That's just wind-blown snow. So you really can't get too close to those because you don't know how stable they are. But you don't really know where they start either. So it's pretty treacherous up there. But after all of that, that's me on the summit of Mount Everest. I actually ended up following a big group and passing a lot of them, but like I said, it was just Lakpa and I who summited together on that day from our team. And that's me probably in my more normal state on the summit of Everest, just taking a little bit of a break. I only stayed on the summit for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. Being a real student of mountaineering, it's kind of a weird sensation up there. Like, I kind of always felt like I was late. I didn't want to be caught late on the mountain because I know that's when bad things really happen. And it did snow every afternoon on Mount Everest, so I didn't want to be up there in the afternoon. Plus, I was carrying all of our medicine. So, and you can get cerebral edema and pulmonary edema, and I knew all of that, but cerebral edema really kind of messes with your mind. So all the while I'm climbing up there, I'm like doing math problems to myself, but I'm also giving myself the answers to these math problems. So if I was coherent or I wasn't, I probably wouldn't have known it, but I did have a really good climb, and finished it strong, I think, Lakpa and I. And I did want to breathe some of the rarefied air up there. We did use oxygen, but it's pretty minimal at that point. Yeah, I was only using it like a real lean flow just to get a little supplement. So, I mean, even with the oxygen, you're talking like, I don't know, 5, 10 breaths per step. And I was passing people at that pace. So, you know, it's really slow moving to get there. On the way down, that's Lakpa and I in our tent. Lakpa actually got snowblind, so just because of the radiation is so intense up there, there's not much atmosphere. You have to really watch out for your eyes. You can't have them exposed at all, and it's really painful, and you can actually, like I said, go truly blind. But he didn't go truly blind, but his eyes really did hurt him bad. And that was us back at Camp 2 after coming all the way back down. So after we summited, we retreated back to Camp 4. It was a hard night on Camp 4. The wind was blowing. It was really cold. We didn't have any sleeping bags, so didn't sleep. And then we just kind of packed up the next morning, headed back down to Camp 2. So if you want to imagine, from the time you leave Camp 3 till you summit and get back to Camp 2, it was 56 hours of no sleep. And I drank a half a liter of water in that whole time and didn't eat anything because you can't cook at 26,000 feet because water boils and nothing cooks. So noodles stay hard as a rock and things like that. So yeah, it was like 56 hours with basically a half a liter of water and pretty much moving nonstop. So it's that's really what climbing Everest is about. It's being able to have that kind of mental toughness. So yeah, I think that's the start. So yeah, that was it. We have a couple of minutes, I think, for some questions. I kind of cruised through some things pretty quickly. This is the down suit, in case you really want to see some. And these are the pants for it. This is like a sleeping bag when you wear it. It's like great.
Thank you for that experience. Was it tougher going up or was it tougher going down?
Both. Yeah, I don't know. You know, for me, it's scarier coming down because, you know, going up, you don't always appreciate the steepness of what you climbed. Coming down, you do know the steepness of what you climbed. And I made one mistake throughout the whole climb, and I kind of kicked myself for it. There's a couple, you can actually do like a real, like rappel, where you clip on and use equipment and you rappel down. Or you can do what's called an arm rappel, where you just wrap your arm around, or wrap the rope around your arm and you go down that way. I tried an arm rappel, and it wasn't the right choice, and I got moving so fast, I burned a hole right through my glove and my hand trying to stop myself. But it was all because I was kind of in a hurry and I didn't want to take the time to do it right. But I'm not usually that careless. I was in that instance, and I still kicked myself for it. But it is definitely scarier coming down. I felt a lot better once, you know, I was off the mountain, because that's a lot of accidents really happen on the way down. Anything else? Yeah.
Terry, just talk a little bit about your mental state, climbing up and reaching the summit, and what it took to get there mentally.
Well, mentally, that's the hardest part of it. Like, a lot of people drop out way before that, because climbing Everest, from the time you get to base camp, you are really not feeling very well. You don't want to eat, you can't sleep very well, and you know, we've always said it's like how much crap are you willing to put up with to get to the summit is really about a lot of what climbing Mount Everest is. So, so yeah, it's fatiguing from that standpoint, just to stay in the game long enough to get to the summit because of all those things that you're dealing with. If you get sick, you just don't recover. So before I actually did go to the summit, I went way down the mountain. I went way back to what's called the forested zone, where there's plants and trees and stuff growing, where there's more oxygen, just to recover a little bit before trying to make that summit push, because I knew staying at base camp even wasn't going to be good enough. And I went down there, man, I ate like a champ, and I'm not a great eater at high altitude, which is why 56 hours, and I don't even really want to drink at high altitude, because your body is so worried about keeping vital things going with the lack of oxygen that the last thing it's worried about is digesting food. That absolutely is not what it's worried about. So even drinking water, a lot of that is difficult. So it's hard from that standpoint. I lost, it's like almost 20, 25 pounds, and I'm not a big guy to lose that much weight. So yeah, I lost a ton of weight doing it, and it's hard. Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
What did your family think before and then afterwards? Can you just give us a little bit of commentary on that?
Yeah, well, my mom and dad probably never really appreciated how bad or how difficult or how dangerous it was. Because they, you know, oh yeah, Dad and we climbed out. You know, well, I don't think it's quite the same. But anyway, I did do a lot of climbing before I went, and in all honesty, I'd never seen a death before Everest. On Everest, I did. When we made our first trip to the base of that Lhotse face to try to go up to Camp 3, Lachlan and I and another climber got there first, and there was a Sherpa that was on, and there's just one rope that would go up that face. Everybody used it. He was hanging there. He got hit by something, a piece of ice or a rock or something, but he was dead. And it was pretty recent. So we took him off the rope and buried him in the snow, and that was like the first time I had ever seen anybody killed in the mountains in the climbing that I had done. And then to top that off, like a couple of Koreans were killed in an avalanche. They were trying a different route, but they carried their bodies down our same route, so I saw that. And then as I was heading up to Camp 4 on our summit push, Lakpa said something which caused me to turn around, and I saw a climber falling down that Lhotse face. It was a Sherpa woman who was climbing Lhotse, which is the mountain right next to it. She fell 4,000 or 5,000 feet and got killed, but I actually saw her falling down the mountain. And the scary thing is that climbing mentality was like, there really wasn't any, we knew, that this was a fatal fall. There wasn't anything we could do. And we just kept climbing. It's I don't know, it's almost like I guess there is some expectation that bad things are going to happen, and hopefully you can mitigate it for yourself.